How's it going, everyone? You're watching or listening to the Eskandy Sports Podcast, the number one Canadian sports basketball podcast in my household. And our guest here today is a Shaftesbury High School and University of Washington alum, where he averaged 18 and 12 in his senior year, led the NCAA Division I in field goal percentage for 3 years, the 47th overall pick by the 76ers, Team Canada player, Canadian Basketball Hall of Famer, pinball champion, and soon-to-be movie star. All of this out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Welcome, Todd MacCulloch. Todd, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate it. It sounds pretty good when you say it like that.
I dug into the research and I found it. And I really want to emphasize the Winnipeg, Manitoba part because I think to date you're still the only NBA player out of Manitoba. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a good number of NHL players and maybe a couple of baseball players. And I don't know about the NFL. I think a friend of mine was just on vacation and he met a Winnipegger who I think was maybe drafted into the NHL the same year I was drafted into the NBA. And so I haven't met the guy yet, but I feel like there's not that many of us. So we need to get to know each other and support each other. I know Corey Koski, I think, was in the Major League Baseball about the time I came up. And so I feel like these are names that I would root for those guys and want them to do well. Whenever I see somebody's from Canada and playing well in the big leagues down here, I always root for that player and for that team.
I spent 2 years in Manitoba myself, in Roblin, Manitoba. I lived there. And we have one NHLer, Jace Harlock. I think he's with Ottawa now, drafted to Florida. So there's pro athletes coming out of Manitoba, but you still get a little bit surprised every time you hear it. I'm not sure why. So
not that many NBA players, but I'm happy to carry that flag, and it's just the way things shook out. But it'll happen again. It happened once, it can happen again.
I hope so, especially with all the work that you're doing with Manitoba basketball these days and the hoop school, which we're going to get to probably a little bit later. I want to go kind of through your career history, high school, college, NBA, of course, and we'll get to Manitoba. But yeah, Wacky Wednesday today. I think, the history books are going to show today was the day where the president of the United States got impeached again. But I didn't even know that until about 30 minutes ago because my mind's been kind of boggled by the James Harden trade, which also happened today. Have you been keeping tabs on the NBA today?
This is breaking news. I had read an article that maybe Harden was saying that whatever the situation was in Houston was irreparable and a change to happen. So where is he now?
Oh, wow. So I'm breaking the news to you. So James Harden got traded to Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
They decided to take the Brooklyn deal instead of the Ben Simmons deal from Philly.
So Philly had an offer on the table in Brooklyn and they okay. So so he did the Nets lose anybody in the trade?
So the Nets,
or was it free agent signing?
Yeah. So the Nets, they traded Caris LeVert, who then got traded again from Houston, to Indiana for Victor Oladipo.
Wow, that's a lot of pieces in that puzzle.
Yeah, there's a fourth team in there. The Cavs were involved. A bunch of players getting displaced. But I wanted to ask you, because James Harden was talking about going to Brooklyn earlier than today. He kind of had those feelings there, and he's another one of these players that was able to kind of force his way to not just to get traded, but to get traded to the team that he wants to get traded to. How different is that from when you were in the league? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's good that the players have some power. So I was definitely not requesting any trades or making any demands, and I didn't have the cachet to do it. I mean, if I was as good as James Harden and I could put the ball in the hoop the way he did, I would have had a lot more power. But I was certainly I felt very lucky to be with the organizations that I was with. Sometimes you have a choice, sometimes you don't, depending on if you're a free agent or whether you're drafted. And I was very lucky to be drafted by the Sixers, a team that was on the rise, a team that was making the playoffs and getting better each year. And so I got on the Sixers right when they were, peaking and getting better. And so that was a fun ride and getting to the finals in year 2. And then as a free agent, now I was a second round pick with a 2-year contract. And at the end of it, the power in my case, goes to the player. And fortunately, I played well enough in the finals to have a couple of teams, maybe 3 or 4 teams that were interested in my services. And I think my agent told me the key is to have 2 or more, and then you get your rate goes up, and you get into a little bit of a bargaining position and maybe a little bit of an auction. And in my situation, there were several teams that were vying for my services, and then I was able to make the choice, and I ended up choosing the Nets, and it turned out to be a good choice. And they had Jason Kidd that I knew was coming, and we ended up making it to the finals that year, and just give me a second here. Sorry.
No worries at all.
So it was so that the power was in my hands, and I signed a 6-year contract, and I thought I would be there for a while. And then I think at the end of that season, we had a good season. We made it to the finals. Unfortunately, we lost in the finals, but we were playing Shaq and Kobe and the Lakers, and they were one of those, kind of once in a generation type dynasties. And at the end of one season, I completed one of the 6 under contract, and I was fishing in Selwyn Lake Lodge up in the Northwest Territories. And there was the fishing, the guy who owned the camp, and then his son had grown up there, and he was driving the boat. And so we were having a shore lunch. We were having some northern pike, I think, or maybe some trout. And he said, "Okay, so Todd, you signed a 6-year contract. Does that mean you'll be with the Nets for, the next 5 years?" And I said, "No, they could trade me right now. They have the rights. They have the power. I'm a commodity, and I could be traded right now, and I wouldn't even know." And lo and behold, we fished for the next however many hours. We get back to the lodge, and I'm throwing darts with the guy I was with. And the only TV I think at the fishing lodge was in the kitchen, and the cook came out and said, "Hey, the Nets, you guys just traded Keith Van Horn to the Sixers for Dikembe Mutombo." And it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, "Oh man, Keith's my buddy, and my wife's friends with his wife, and I just lost a friend, but Dikembe's awesome. He was a great teammate of mine in Philadelphia. There goes my starting spot. I'm not starting over Dikembe. I've lost that." And then I just did the math. And most trades, mathematically, the salaries need to add up. And I knew what Dikembe made, and I knew what Keith made, and I knew that my salary would have made that equal. And I said, "Any chance I was in the trade?" And he said no. And I thought, okay. So I kept throwing darts, and he came out an hour later and said, "Oh yeah, you're right. You were in the trade." And I was like, all right, that rocked my world. And I called my wife on the satellite phone, and she had already heard the news. So I was the last one to find out. So that at that point, the team has your rights, and they can do with you, what they want. If you still want that paycheck, you go where they tell you. Unfortunately, they traded me back to Philadelphia, a team that I was very happy to be a part of, and still had the same staff and players, and I was very happy to go back there. So sometimes you have control, sometimes you don't. So I think it's good when the players have more control. So I kind of got off topic there a little bit, but I think basketball is kind of unique that way, where stars can sort of make those demands, and the ownership listens.
Yeah, it's a super interesting development that these guys they now have the power to kind of pick and choose where they play. But you had the whole, I guess, NBA life cycle during your career, where you got drafted, you got a contract, and you got traded. So you probably experienced all the highs and lows. And I want to pick your brain on those things a little bit later on. I kind of want to take us back to Manitoba. For, I guess, when did you know that basketball was going to be a big part of your life, and who got you started, and just the origin?
I'd say my friends got me started. Friends have always been an important part of my life, and that continues. And it's tough to be sort of away from them right now with our current world situation. But I've always wanted to be with my friends, whatever they were doing. I've always been relatively athletic. Started out playing hockey. My father played hockey to some level. My older brother played hockey, and I think as a Canadian, you do your duty. And some countries have military subscription service. Canada has play hockey as well, and as long as you can. And so I started when I was maybe 5 and played until I was about 12. And then I think it was 80 games a year, 80 practices. And I got a little burned out as a 12-year-old. Said, look, I love athletics. I love being a part of a team. I think I'm going to shift to a sport that still has me as part of a team, but maybe we're just not going at it as hard as playing high-level hockey in Winnipeg. And a bunch of my friends were into basketball. And so being tall, being coordinated, and having good hands, I guess the game chose me, and I chose the game, and I excelled at it and wanted to be where they were. And that continued on through high school. And as I continued to grow, I didn't really lose my coordination, I think, because I was always playing, and basketball is just one of those games there's always access, whether it's a gymnasium or playing outside. There really isn't a lot of barriers to entry. And so we could play all year round. If I wasn't playing on the high school team, it was on the provincial team. And so never really lost my coordination, and just continued to get better. And basketball became the game. Everything else fell away. I played badminton in junior high. I played soccer when I was younger. I played volleyball through part of high school, and basketball was the one sort of constant that continued. And it continued for many years after that. So I think it's a great game. I think it's got a lot going for it. And unlike a lot of other games that, I'd heard sometimes in the NFL, some of those players could make it into the Hall of Fame without ever touching the ball. Maybe they're a great lineman, and they're just not involved with moving the ball or scoring touchdowns. And I think in basketball, it's a nice blend of power and finesse, that it's not just power, but it's important, but it's also the ability to finish. And so people have compared it to jazz and being improvisational, and just being, finding the opening and playing as a team and as a unit. So I think it's a brilliant game, and I thank Dr. Naismith for bringing the game to the world.
For sure. And there's two things I wanted to touch on, because one, let's start with when you started playing basketball. I know there's a lot of very tall players that kind of get pushed into basketball because of their height. Do you think your circumstances let you kind of love basketball first before you started playing? Or did you have the growth spurt after you started playing basketball, and that dynamic?
Yeah, I was always tall. I was always the tallest kid in my class, and so height was always there for me. I think in ninth grade, I was 6 feet at the start of it, which would have put me probably as the tallest ninth grader to start the year. Right. What's the school year? 8 months or something, 9 months. I was 6'6" at the end of it, so in less than a calendar year, I'd grown 6 inches, and of course that bodes well. I mean, I never had great ball handling skills, good enough, I guess, for a 7-footer. I was never going to be a point guard. I was never going to be anyone like Durant, somebody that gets the rebound and goes the length of the floor. Even my dribbling and passing was acceptable, but I definitely and my high school coach, they made a point. My coaches made a point of just not sticking me down in the post and always playing with my back to the basket. I did all the drills that the guards did. Worked on my ball handling, so I tried to be a complete player. But I think I knew at my height, at my size, not the quickest, not the best jumper, not the strongest. If I end up being 6'9", I'm not really going to go anywhere. And I remember, obviously Christian Laettner was maybe arguably the best U.S. college player in terms of his career and what he was able to accomplish. And I knew he was 6'11", and I even though he had a way more complete game, I thought if I can get to 6'11", I think then that's going to be a height where I can get, my height is going to allow me to go to whatever level I make it to. And so I was sort of secretly hoping I would reach 6'11". And some guys think when you're 7-footer, you're slow, or you're a lumberer. And I thought 6'11" sounds kind of svelte and kind of, you're a little more agile. And so I think 6'11 and a half is where I got to, 6'11 13ths. So that's sort of where I dreamed myself to be. My dad is 6'6", my older brother 6'6", and I thought that's where I would stop. And I kept on going. And for me, it was the right height to still be able to move, but be able to, keep the ball high and keep it away from the little guys that always want to steal it from you.
Do you credit hockey and those other sports you played growing up with your soft hands? Because that's something that kept coming up over and over again when I was doing the research, that you have guys like Jason Kidd and Allen Iverson and even Coach Beeline talking about your touch and your ability to finish around the rim. So do you think the coordination early on helped you?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think in hockey, you've got to cushion the pass. I mean, if you just leave your stick there, the puck is going to bounce off of it. So we were always practicing on cushioning the pass. And basketball, you'd think maybe it wouldn't be that important, but there's a lot of big guys that just don't cushion the pass. And it's different than catching a puck. But I also played volleyball until the end of 10th grade. And I think the ability to set, and even though I wasn't a setter, I was probably, more of a middle hitter or a weak side hitter, the ability to be comfortable with the ball above your head is unnatural for a lot of basketball players. I think they teach us to get the ball, get in the post, do a drop step, do a one power dribble, gather yourself and go up. And the problem, it's great, you want that, but even that one power dribble, little guys are just chomping at the bit. And so after my redshirt year, where I just got to practice all year and didn't play in any games, I got so tired of a teammate, Brian Boston, who at the time was the leader in steals at University of Washington. He just waited for me to put it down for that one power dribble. And so I just decided to just catch it, keep it high, rotate. And I think it's uncomfortable and unnatural for big guys to have a basketball above their head, and they feel vulnerable and they feel weak. I think it was almost like a set. If I got an offensive rebound, instead of bringing it down and going way back up, I would just do a little hop, maybe go up my tiptoes, come down a little bit, bring it down to here, and then go right back up with it and not have the little guys have a chance. And that skill that helped me, in high school, maybe, was way more conscious of it in college. And that helped me in the NBA as well. So I think the hands that from hockey, from volleyball, I also juggled a lot. And I think my fourth grade teacher taught anyone in the school, if they wanted to juggle, there was a whole bunch of skills on the wall. Level 1, do this, level 2. And I really took to that. And so a couple times a week, I'd stay after school as part of juggling club. And it was kind of the identity of my junior high school. And I think all of those things really helped my hand-eye coordination. And, I think, Allen Iverson was very complimentary of my hands. And he told me at one point that I don't have bones in my hands, that that just my hands are soft. And I asked him, I said, you have great hands too. Why doesn't anyone, there's so many superlatives to talk about how amazing Iverson is, but it seemed like with guards, nobody mentions how good their hands are. I guess it's just a given. If you're Steve Nash or you're a point guard, you're not going to drop it. You're going to pass it. You're going to have a soft touch. And so maybe there's a perception, deserved or not, that big guys, some of them have stone hands and some of them don't catch as well. And maybe it's because we develop late. But I always sort of had that attached to me. And I wasn't the quickest guy. And some of the announcers would, Bill Raftery would say, MacCulloch with a kiss off the glass with a belly bump. I would hit someone with my tummy, knock them out of the way, and just get enough room. And I think another coach, or he said I had a quick twitch. It was like, I'm not fast, but then, there'd be a moment where I might need to get the ball up in the glass, and I might get it up there just a half second before somebody blocks it. And so I think it was a little bit deceptive, where people thought that I was slow and they could get a hand on it. And I think when I had to be quick, I think in small bursts, I could get the ball in the glass and, maybe avoid getting blocked.
Coming out of Manitoba, how was the high school basketball scene there at the time? I stumbled across one provincial game that I want to talk to you about a little bit later, but you had a really positive high school provincial finals. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was, the game of my life, both in terms of production and also in terms of results. I mean, we had the Shaftesbury High School that I went to, I loved it. I wouldn't change a thing. We didn't have much of a basketball history as a school of success leading up to when our feeder school, I lived in a neighborhood in Winnipeg that was a new neighborhood. We had a new junior high school. So all of a sudden, Shaftesbury now had this feeder school that they didn't have before because the school was so new. And so, obviously I was good at basketball, but it wasn't just me. I had a team. We were together for 6, 7, 8, 9 for 4 years. We had amazing chemistry. And now this group, or this pod of us, now we became part of Shaftesbury's system, and we made them a contender. But we really didn't have any real track record or of success, even within our conference. And Daniel McIntyre, they were the defending champs, and they were amazing. And we looked up to them, and they had won it all. And so now we find ourselves in the final against them, and I'm amped up. I can't believe we're playing the defending champions. I'm a junior or grade 11 player, and Daryl Baptiste was their star. I think he was a grade 12, a senior player. And I didn't love our chances. I just thought they were the number one team all year, and they were the defending champs. And I don't know, they didn't have somebody 7 feet or close in terms of height. So they were just, my team was throwing it to me, and I did what I told you. I kept the ball high. I turned around and I banked it in off the glass. And I think we won the game 61-59. I had 50 in the final. So in terms of an output, it was probably my second highest total. That just happened to be in the provincial championships. and we won the game. And I just could not believe that it was over, that we were the champions of the province. And I just felt so elated that I my whole career, I think I've been chasing after that feeling of how good it felt to be a Manitoba Provincial champion, and just have never been able to get quite back on that cloud. I think when I was younger, I'd watch the NCAA championships, or I would watch the NBA finals. And being a high schooler, and I ran around like just a knucklehead because I was so excited, and I didn't understand why, older players weren't running around like I was. I was like, you guys just won it all. Why aren't you going crazy? And as you get a little older, I think you realize maybe you got to calm it down a little bit. And I think Magic Johnson had a story about that, where I think it was maybe the first game of Magic's career, and I think Kareem hit a skyhook to win it. And Magic was so elated, he went and he jumped on Kareem, and he wrapped his arms around his neck, and he was choking him out of excitement. Kareem was like, "Hey, we got 81 more games. Get off me. You're going to break my neck." And he was just, it was like, "Hey, we are supposed to win, right? We can't just celebrate every victory of a regular season game."
So you just said that you were chasing that feeling from winning the high school championship, the provincial championship in high school, throughout your career, and you've had a Sweet 16 experience. You've played in the finals twice. So have you ever tried to conceptualize that, like how something so early on in your career is still maybe one of the best feelings you had, even with all these huge accomplishments?
Yeah, I have tried to figure that out. I've tried to recapture it, and I think it might, some of it might be the format. That's it's sort of one and done in that case. Provincial finals is one game, and so when it's over, it's over. Maybe similar to football, where the ball could take some funny bounces and the result is in. The NCAA tournament is a whole series of them. I think you maybe need to win 6 or 7 games to win it all, and then in the NBA finals, it's a 7-game series. And maybe if we had come to a game 7 and we had won one of the two, maybe it would have been different. But the fact is we got dominated in the 2001 finals as well as 2002. And I think some of that excitement of being at the pinnacle and being in the finals and being one of 2 teams, we just weren't competitive in terms of a wins and losses standpoint. So I think just the format of those changed a little bit. But the NCAA was probably the next closest thing. Even the Olympics. It's a game by game thing, and unfortunately, we missed making it into the medal round. And but in the NCAA tournament, it's one and done. And we were an 11 seed playing against 6 seed Xavier. Washington hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in a dozen years, and so I think I reveled in the fact that we bursted a lot of brackets. I think anyone that wasn't a University of Washington student was not going to pick a team that they didn't recognize the name and hadn't seen in a bracket for 12 years, and we beat the 6-seeded Xavier, by 2. I think there was a shot at the buzzer that probably got away with a foul, and just ran around like a chicken with my head cut off. So I did have a bit of a habit of maybe running faster than I've ever run at the conclusion of a game. There was one college game against Oregon where I had to get the go-ahead bucket with maybe 5 seconds left in the game, and in my head, it's over. They can't tie this, but they had a player who could cover 94 feet in 4.5 seconds. So I was running alongside him, just waiting for the buzzer to go, and it didn't go. He shot a shot, and fortunately he was shorter, and I blocked him at the buzzer, and it was a clean block, and it went into the stands, and then it was over. And I ran around high stepping, and everyone's like, he's never run that fast during the game. So I think just the emotions would get to me. So there have been some close games where I've gotten a little excited at the end of them, in those moments of just the craziness and the hecticness of the end of a basketball game.
So the provincial game, Team Manitoba versus Team BC, it's actually on YouTube. I stumbled across it. Very notable player on the other side of the court as well, Steve Nash. Did you guys ever have any sort of like camaraderie coming up around the same time, both being from Canada, or was it kind of just he's over there, I'm over here?
At that time, I didn't know Steve. He was a legend back then to us. We were unbelievably excited to beat Team BC that had Steve Nash on it. We knew how good he was. We know how much better he makes that team and every other team that he was on. So we thought that may have been our chance to medal after beating BC, and I think we lost to Quebec, and that was it for our medal hope. So I only knew of the legend of Steve Nash. I don't think I met him then. BC hung out with BC, Manitoba hung out with Manitoba, but fortunately I was able to play with Steve. I think 1999 might have been the first time, and we were trying to qualify for the Sydney Olympics, and I think that's the first time we were teammates, and he really helped bring me out of a funk. I had been, it seems a little crazy to think that I had just been drafted, 47th out of 60. So I'm one of 60 people on the planet that are drafted. I should have been over the moon. But I think it has to do with expectations and them being met or not. And I thought I would be a first round pick. I wanted the security of a 3-year guaranteed contract with a 4th-year option. Didn't get that, and really took it a little too far in the sense that I lost my confidence for a while by being a 2nd-round pick, and just didn't think. I thought people didn't think I was a good player, and I didn't really believe in myself. Fortunately, played with Team Canada, started playing under, with Nash as our leader. Realized I'm not a bad player. This guy makes anyone better. He just puts the ball right in your hands, right by the hoop, makes it easier, makes it more fun, makes it more successful. I end up leading the tournament in rebounding. We qualify for the Sydney Olympics, which was my goal. I know it was Steve's goal. And now we're playing in the finals against the U.S. team. I'm playing against Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett and I think Alonzo Mourning. And, who am I? And we lose. But I have, 22 points and 16 rebounds against the Dream Team as kind of a nobody. And the coach of that team was Larry Brown, who was the coach of the Sixers. And they decided to keep me and offer me a 2-year minimum contract. And so all of a sudden, my confidence over the course of that 10-day period, however long that was sky high. And I felt like if I can play against the Dream Team and I can play in the NBA, maybe I've got a shot. And so I think I give a lot of credit to Steve for believing in me, Coach Triano, all those guys. And I just was so proud to help Canada get back to the Olympics. We hadn't been there since 1988, and we haven't been back since. So that was a very special time in Canada basketball, and I'm very proud to have been a part of that squad.
Absolutely. It's still puzzling how we haven't been back, especially with the guys coming up the ranks now. I think there's good hope, but it's overdue.
Yeah, hopefully the next one. There's certainly the talent is there. So I hope everyone can play together.
A major theme of the podcast and kind of what we've been doing here as a whole has just been highlighting how players, primarily from Ontario, but in general, players that tend to be overlooked from being in Canada, we like to highlight their journey and how they got to where they end up going, whether that be overseas, or even a completely different career. So with your story specifically, Manitoba, I would imagine is even less scouted than Ontario, probably even more so at the time that you were about to pick a university. So how did the folks over at Washington get wind of you, and how was the recruitment process being from Manitoba?
Very good question. I was able to make it to the Manitoba Provincial team, and so the high school season ended, and there was probably grade 11 year going into senior year. It might have been actually, I think the first time I went down to Phoenix, I was a 10th grader. After the 10th grade season, made the provincial team. We went down to Phoenix, Arizona to kind of play in an AAU BCI tournament, All-Star. And I did okay. Didn't really get noticed. Maybe North Dakota State, geographically, the U.S. universities that were close to the border, they started sending me letters and making me aware that if I did want to play in the U.S., I need to start thinking about taking the SAT entrance exam. And then I think the next summer when I played provincial team again, went down to Phoenix, Arizona, this time as a junior, grade 11 player. And I had gotten better. I had gotten taller. And I was playing against a guy named Ray Lafrenz that went on to a wonderful NBA career. And all of this, everyone in the U.S. wanted him. He ended up going to Kansas. And so all the big-time coaches were there to watch him. And, he had a way better skill set than I did in terms of his ability to handle and shoot threes and put the ball on the ground. But what these coaches saw when they went there to watch him was kind of an unknown 6'11" kid with good hands, good feet, and pretty good fundamentals. And so I wasn't going to be a Ray Lafrenz blue chip prospect that could go anywhere. But all of a sudden I became this person that, maybe I was probably recruited by 60 universities. I wasn't getting Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky, those some of those, premier ones, but I was getting letters from UCLA and Arizona and Connecticut, some excellent basketball programs. And by the time I got home from that week, my parents had taken phone calls from 60 schools essentially offering a scholarship. And so they kind of weeded through those and looked during work, lunch breaks, my dad would go to the public library and look at some of the graduation records of some of the schools. Like, are these schools serious about their students, or is this just a basketball factory or academy? And I think they eliminated some schools based on if they had a poor track record. They knew how important an education would be. And I was overwhelmed by trying to deal with this many coaches and this many phone calls. And I think they narrowed it down to about 10 for me to work with. And that's how I ended up at University of Washington. And if you make it to the NBA, it's hard to look back and think that you made a bit of a bad choice. I loved my time at the University of Washington. We got back to the tournament. Met my wife when I was there. Still have lifelong friends from that team and outside the team. So looking back, I've got no regrets about the school that I chose, and lifelong Husky now.
You made a decision at some point during your college career to redshirt. How did you get to that point where you thought maybe this is the best decision for me, or did someone else maybe recommend it, or how did it benefit you, and how did you feel when you had to ultimately make that decision?
I think that decision was made for me by the coaching staff, and I think I misinterpreted it. I think I just had such tunnel vision. I had that very good grade 11 year in Winnipeg where I had 50 of those 61 points. I was skinny. Senior year, I think I stopped growing up and maybe didn't have the best eating habits and put on maybe 30, 40 pounds, not the good kind of weight. And I think when the assistant coaches came up to watch me play, they were sort of surprised. I looked different physically in a bad way. And so I sort of became a project, and they knew I had the skills, but I needed, my fitness really needed some work in order to be ready for Pac-10 basketball. And so when the decision was made for me to redshirt, I took that as I'm not good, or I'm not the player that they recruited. And so it put me in a negative headspace for quite a while. And it took me a long time to realize that they did have my best interests at heart. They knew how good I could be if I took this year and I got stronger and I got more fit and I got used to the pace and the tempo of Pac-10 basketball. And I think about where I was as a senior and how much better I was than I would have been had I used that first year for eligibility. So I thought it the optics were that it meant that they didn't believe in me, but it was actually the opposite, that they thought I could be something to help the program and help myself. And they were right to take that year. And I'm sort of indebted to them for helping me become the player that I did become.
Well, yeah, you had a tremendous college career after that, right? So there's been a few highlights here and there, but I want to talk about the game against I want to talk about the Richard Hamilton game.
Yeah,
I think that's an okay way to say it. So that was the long run, but
flashbacks from that one, and
they ripped the bandage off too early.
Yeah.
How about you talk first about the March Madness atmosphere and the experience heading down there, and just week over week how it feels like to be part of that environment.
That's what it was all about for us. Coach Bender, Bob Bender was our coach. He had a great career as a player. He won the national championship in 1976 with the Indiana Hoosiers and Bob Knight. They went undefeated. I think they're the last college team to go undefeated. Then he transferred and went to Duke, made it to the game, the championship final, and I think at the time maybe the only player to play in the championship game with two different teams. So he had this. In every school before Washington where he'd been, he had gotten them to the tournament, and that was the goal. That was the mission. I think that's why they brought him in. So we all understood as a recruiting class, this is the mission, to get Washington back to the tournament and, find out from our coaches told us all these great things about how special it is, and we want to be a part of it. And so my redshirt year, the team didn't go. My freshman year didn't go. Sophomore year didn't go. Now I've got a junior and senior year, and we had a good my junior year. We had a good year, and we had a good resume in terms of our BRI and strength of schedule. But what we were missing on our resume leading up to Selection Sunday was a win against a ranked team. And second to last game of the season was against UCLA, and I think they were 11th or 12th. And it was kind of like, if we beat them at home, that should get us in. And we were down one with 2.1 seconds left. I think it was pretty obvious to most people that the team was going to inbound the ball. It was on on the baseline, very close to UCLA's hoop. And I think everyone knew the ball was coming to me. And they fouled me, I think, just as the ball was entered. So now I go to the line with 2.1. They weren't going to let me just catch it and lay it in, so I had to earn it. So 2.1 seconds left in the game. I'm at the free throw line feeling probably the most pressure that I've ever felt, knowing if these go in, we're going to the tournament. Said a little prayer. God answered my prayers. Both swishes. We win the game. We go to the NCAA tournament. And now I think we were just so excited to be there that we were having a ton of fun. So just after Selection Sunday, being together as a team and seeing the team pop up, where we were going, who we were playing, to us, it didn't matter. We just wanted to be in the field there somewhere. And I think we were just having so much fun. It showed, and we played well against Xavier. And then, just the feeling of peace and serenity after a big win. Upsets happen all the time, and we were just happy to be on the winning side of that. To sit in the stands and watch the regional next game and see number 14 Richmond defeat number 3 South Carolina and realize, all right, we are playing a 14 seed next game. We're the favorite. Like, why shouldn't we win this game? So I think that added to our belief that we could do it. And I think I had 31 and 18 in that game against Richmond.
You had a really big game. And Coach Beeline was the coach of that team. He's actually just starting out there, and he had some high praise for you after that game.
Oh, well, that's cool. I didn't realize. I think I was just so focused on the game. I didn't realize that's where he was. That was a very good team, and they had, they're a little bit undersized, and so I was able to play well offensively. But I think they had a player named Stevenson who I think he had, close to 30 points and went off. And I thought I could just stay out of foul trouble and stand there, with him being undersized, put my hands up, and he'd have a hard time shooting over me. He had no problem scoring over me, but I think the ball was just bouncing. I think it bounced off one of their heads into my hands right at the bucket, and I kind of felt like that was a good omen, that the ball is just bouncing our way. And so we win that game, and now we're going up against 2-seed UConn. And once again, now we're feeling like, all right, mathematically, they're the favorite team. We got nothing to lose. We hadn't been in the tournament 12 years. We've won 2. So you were talking about, NCAA tournament. So you've got those first 2 games in one site. And if you win it and you're still alive, now you're one of 16 out of that 64 started. You go back to campus. There's so much excitement on campus. The coaches are happy. The practices are fun. There's so much school pride. And now you jump on the plane and you go to the next location, and now you're playing against UConn, a college basketball powerhouse, and we play well. I mean, the only lead we had was with 24 seconds left, but we gave ourselves a chance, and no surprise that Rip Hamilton hits a big shot. The guy's, an unbelievable talent, great guy, and he hit a big shot. And they were smart to start that last play. I think there may have been 12 and a half seconds left in the game. Sometimes, a point guard might wait until 7-8 seconds to start their drive and give themselves a chance for a bucket, a putback, but not let the other team have a chance to answer. Yeah. And to their credit, I think he started his drive with 12 seconds left, and it gave them a second chance, a third chance, and it was either a fourth or a fifth chance when Rip finally hit it. So we gave them way too many opportunities, and when I watch it on YouTube, I watch it over and over and over, and I think, why didn't I just grab the ball? And at the time, you sort of feel like we're the only team that's been burned. And then every year I watch the NCAA tournament and I see teams get burned. I think, welcome to the club. I feel a little bit better every time someone else gets their heart broken. I feel like, come on in. The water's warm, and it makes me feel a little better that we're not the only ones that just got crushed.
Is it hard to feel crushed in that moment when even just getting there, by your own admission, was just a thrill? So now you're kind of almost on borrowed time there, and then you get to that point, and now it's a crushing feeling.
Yeah, it's hard. When you look back, obviously the season was a huge success. The NCAA tournament was a huge success. I think, Washington hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since, Detlef Schrempf and Christian Vell back in the 80s. So we kind of put our stamp on a special Washington Huskies team. The people in this area still remember, and people still talk to me about that play, and they remember it. And so, you look back and you think that was a success, but to be that close to winning and making it to the Elite Eight is pretty incredible. And if we had done that, we would have been playing North Carolina, and it would have been super cool to play against, a team like Connecticut with such a history, and then a team like North Carolina in the NCAA tournament and that was Vince Carter, and that was Anton Jameson and Sir. They were just incredible, and I don't think I would have given us much chance in the game, but just to be playing against them would have been so much fun. But UConn had other things on their mind, and a lot of people, when they tell me they think that UConn went on to win it that year, But it wasn't until the next year where they ended up going all the way and getting it done. So there's no shame in losing to a team like that.
Was there ever any doubt that you would be doing a full college career, or any thoughts about going into the draft early, or when did pro become a reality?
I think I started thinking about it in my sophomore year. I think I thought maybe I would have the talent to play. I mean, I played on the national team ever since I was, not the full national team, but the junior national team, and part of that program. And all of those guys at some point, not that many in the NBA, way more Canadians in the NBA now. They all had jobs in Europe, in first, second, third division, Switzerland, Germany, Spain. And so I thought, after my sophomore year of college, we played Michigan, and they had two of the Fab Five. They had Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, and we lost the game by 1. And I think I had 12 and 10. And I thought, okay, if I'm a freshman, sophomore, and I can have a double against this Michigan team that still has a lot of cachet, maybe I can, play this game professionally. And I thought maybe I can play in Italy, maybe I can play in Australia. I think maybe the NBA I wasn't thinking of until probably my junior year, when I had that good NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And there was never really any consideration from me about leaving early. I don't think I would have been, I don't know, maybe I would have been a first rounder, late first round if I had left, because I did have a very strong NCAA tournament, but there really wasn't any thought in my mind that I was ready. We had a good team coming back, and I thought we could go back to the NCAA tournament. I hadn't gotten my degree yet. It was very important. I probably should have had it, because this was my 4th year if you have the red shirt, but I needed some classes still. And I was having love my teammates, and, love the coaching staff, and was having a very good experience there. So I figured the NBA could wait, and maybe I hurt myself. But in terms of where I ended up and the way things fell into place, I can't really complain about the team that drafted me and the people that I met and the coaches I played for.
Do you have any opinions on the one and done, I guess, culture now? The guys are just doing the 1 year before they go to the pro, and now the NBA's feelings about going back to a high school eligibility?
Yeah, I think it's good to let people have that choice. And when you talk about the history of guys like Spencer Haywood back in the day, saying it's unconstitutional to not allow players to make a living. Like, if I'm good enough to support my family and set myself up for potentially generational wealth, I should not be kept. And I think players should have that choice. I just hope that they're getting good information and being told the truth about what their prognosis is. Because if you give away that college education, that opportunity, you can't really get it back. And so I think guys should have the choice to do it, but hopefully they're getting the right kind of information about where they would actually fit. And I think it's tricky. And I worked out, I think, for 8 NBA teams. And in my head was hearing from the scouts, you're late first round. And I was perfectly happy with that projection. But then, if you're telling, let's say late first round is 20 to 30, 10 spots. But if you're telling 30 guys late first round, there's only so many spots in late first round. And that first round went bye-bye to me. And I ended up in the second round. And there was a big difference in terms of job security, whether you went in the first round or the second round. So I think sometimes your idea of where you're going to go and where your agents might think. And I knew that the Vancouver Grizzlies weren't going to draft me, in a sense that my workout with them, at the end of the workout, I was so exhausted. Coach Brian Hill had one of those, padded dummies where, they would simulate. Sometimes coaches would sort of hit you with this foam pad to simulate contact, and you'd have to finish. And Coach Hill was not particularly tall. He was guarding me in the post at the end of the workout with this foam pad, and for the life of me, I couldn't score on him. And I thought, okay, I can't even score on the coach in the post. This team is not drafting me. And so, fortunately, the Sixers took a shot, and it ended up being the right place for me.
Before you get drafted, like the actual selection, what was the draft day like? Because very few people actually get that experience, knowing that I am going to go at some point.
Yeah, I did think that I would be drafted at some point in the 60. I think there's part of me that wasn't so sure where that would be, and thought there's obviously a possibility it could be lower than I want. So there was a lot of, obviously I wanted my family there and I wanted my friends there, but I didn't want, I had all sorts of requests from maybe local TV stations or sports crews that wanted to be there. And I flat out rejected all of the cameras and maybe reporters that wanted to be in the room. And, the so-called party grew. And I kind of wanted it to be small, and it got bigger than I thought. All those people wanted to be there to share that moment with me, but I think I was nervous about it. And I was at a buddy's house down in the basement. We were all huddled around the TV for kind of our own draft party. Maybe a bad sign that the NBA hadn't invited me to be a part of it, so maybe I wasn't projected to be as high as I thought. And then just like watching David Stern's mouth to see if he would form a T for Todd.
Right.
That didn't happen. So my agents were constantly calling me on the cell phone to try and update me on their discussions of trying to see which team it was going to be. So I was always having to leave the basement and get out of the bunker in a sense, up and down and never getting drafted. And eventually the end of the first round happened and I was devastated. And everyone in the room kept looking at me. Every time I wasn't picked, I just felt the eyes of 30 people on me, wondering why, and I thought, did they forget about me? Like, did they even have my name in front of them? Like, I'm still here. So I ended up staying upstairs and instead of running back. And then I was in tears. I was crying because I felt like I had been forgotten and it lost my confidence there for a little bit. So it ended up being not a celebration, not a happy one. And one of my assistant coaches had brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate. And as he left, he said, you know what, I'm going to hang on to this bottle of champagne and we're going to celebrate later. There's going to be something else that happens that we can celebrate. And I always remember that he believed in me. He knew I could be a good player and later we celebrated. And another one of my assistant coaches from that Washington team was good friends with the GM of the Sixers. And so he called him up at the end of the draft and said, hey, you drafted Todd. He's a great kid. I think you guys are going to love him. And the GM told him, well, he's not ready for the NBA and he'll go to Europe and maybe he'll develop and we'll keep his rights and then maybe we'll get him in a few years. So my friend, the assistant coach, was sort of surprised to get that news. So when I called my assistant coach and said, hey, I got drafted by the Sixers and what do you think? And so he doesn't want to break the news to me that he's just heard from the man in charge there that I'm not part of their plans. But I think he knew how good I was and how good I could be. He's like, look, it's going to be tough. You need to go in there with a mentality of making that team and beating somebody out. And so he didn't want to break my heart by telling me that I wasn't in their plans. But he did tell me how important it was going to be for me to try and impress them. And he told me, I don't think they know how good you are. He's like, I know how good you are. I've worked with you for years. And I believe in you, and you need to go show them. And so, fortunately, that chance with Team Canada against the Dream Team in front of Coach Brown was the difference in showing them that I could actually play at that level against great competition.
Do you ever wish that you could go back to that moment on draft day, and I don't want to say handle it different, but maybe like tell yourself, it's gonna be all right. Like you're still getting drafted is a huge deal, or do you think maybe that those feelings at that point maybe projected you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think if I knew how things were going to be okay, I probably would have, instead of sort of ruining the mood for everybody and being a sour sport. I mean, everybody left. It was a little uneasy when the person they're there to celebrate is crying and sad. But maybe things happen for a reason. And I kind of had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I think there were 9 centers that were drafted ahead of me. And, and I think I was, I tried to outplay those guys. And in my rookie year, we had some injuries on the front line of our big men. So I had a chance to play quite a bit, and the Sixers were a good team in the East. And so I ended up making the rookie All-Star team, the All-Star game. There were 8 rookies picked to play against 8 sophomores. And I'm pretty sure that I was the only second round pick out of those 8 people. And so I think I used that as motivation and sort of felt, I want to try and, prove that maybe I should have been drafted earlier and try and keep some of that pride and use it in a healthy way instead of complaining, go out on the court. And it helps to be in a good situation with good teammates that would realize your strengths and weaknesses and maybe get you the ball where you can be successful. And then, guys like Eric Snow would realize, hey, Todd might need a little bit of help defensively. I'm going to drop down off my guy and I'm going to maybe double his guy, and just really understanding how to get the most out of everybody. So we had a very intelligent team, and defensively, I think they were able to help me with some of my inabilities. And then I think they knew if they passed the ball anywhere near me, I was likely going to catch it and finish. So I think they trusted me to finish the play.
What was your first major purchase after the rookie deal?
I bought a Dodge Durango. So it was a $37,000 car. When I first got to the Sixers as a second-round pick, I was not making what Allen Iverson was making. And so I thought, I've got this 2-year guaranteed contract, and, figure in taxes and agent fees and all that stuff. I was out there with my fiance, and I thought if we don't spend in these first 2 years, even if I don't play in the NBA anymore, we can maybe buy ourselves a house and not have a mortgage. And so that was my goal. Don't spend. But I had a 1990 Toyota Corolla in college that was my grandmother's, and when she passed, it was bequeathed to me. This tiny little car. So me and my 7-foot teammate from Germany rolling around this 1990 Corolla that was like $14 to fill up because it was so good on gas, consumption. And so now I show up to Philadelphia carless because my dad, I think, is going to drive it from Vancouver Island to Philadelphia at some point. So I'm living in an apartment building. I have some teammates there, and I'm bumming rides to practice. I'm bumming rides to the airport. And Theo Ratliff, one of my favorite teammates, is like, okay, Todd, this is the second road trip of me giving you a ride to practice and the airport. Do you have a car? Are you going to buy a car? I was like, I don't have a car. Oh, no, I have a car. Don't worry. It's coming. My dad's going to drive it to me. And he's like, okay, I could care less, but what is it? And I said, it's a 1990 Toyota Corolla. He's like, okay, I could care less, but these guys will murder you if you show up in a 1990 Corolla. Do yourself a favor, spend a little bit of your money. I know you want to save it, but you got to get something. Otherwise, you won't hear the end of it. Iverson, these guys will kill you if you show up in a Corolla. So I went out and bought a $37,000 Dodge Durango, and I show up, and it's all polished and looking good. And my teammate George Lynch said, "Hey, that's a nice Durango. Is that thing loaded?" And I said, "Yeah, it's loaded." And he's like, "Really? You got a PlayStation? You got flat screens and 22-inch windows?" Like, no, NBA player loaded. It's just normal people loaded. It's got power windows and power steering and leather. It's not NBA player loaded. Like their cars were tricked out, and I wasn't at that level.
How is AI as a teammate? Would he ever dig into you, or was he more complimentary? I couldn't really catch a read on what kind of teammate he would have been.
He was awesome. He was an incredible teammate. He was so much fun to be around. He had such a huge personality. He was so funny, and I think he knew how good he was. And so I'm nervous, and I'm a rookie, and I'm trying to fit in, and I'm trying to do everything right, and then warm ups. And at some point, I think he just ran and just jumped on my back, just out of nowhere, and I'm feeling like, how can you be so? But he didn't feel the pressure to perform. He is who he is, and he knew how good he was, and it kind of broke the ice and think, you know what, we're here to do a job, but we are lucky to play professional basketball, so maybe I don't need to take it that seriously, and I can have some fun. And so I was worried about getting cut. He wasn't worried about getting cut, so he's having fun out there. But when the game started, this was warm up. When the game started, he had so much determination. He hated to lose, and he just put his body on the line. And so he was, I loved being teammates with Allen Iverson. And I think we were at TGI Fridays one time, and I was with, my friends Paul and Shauna from Winnipeg. And he walked to the bath. He was with his friends, and he walked to the bathroom. And we'd been teammates for maybe a month or something. We had a good bond and loved being his teammates. So much fun. And I said, "Hey, Alan, do you mind signing an autograph for my friends?" He's like, "Sure, I'll sign autographs for your friend. But who are you?" And he looks at me. I'm like, "Who am I?" He's like, "Come on, man, I'm just busting your chops. Don't take it so seriously." So he was a jokester, and he was an extremely good caricaturist. Like he was almost like a cartoonist. And so every now and then he would just pick a teammate and maybe bring out some of their less than flattering features. It was my tummy or something, and then he'd pass around the plane. Everybody get a good laugh unless it was you, and you're like, "Oh man, is that what I look like?" But he was such. I almost wanted to say, "Alan, like, do your worst." I would love to have an original Allen Iverson piece of artwork here that I could frame and put on the wall. So actually, I kind of wish that I'd had Alan do a sketch so I could say this is a one-off Allen Iverson collector's edition. But he was, I had a Discman for all you young people with your your digital music. I had a Discman, but I didn't want to listen because I just wanted to, I wanted to be a part of the conversation. And Iverson was cracking everybody up. I really didn't want to miss what he had to say because he was just he had such a magnetic, larger than life personality that you wanted to hear what he had to say. And he was someone that was so much fun to be teammates with. And he played so hard that you couldn't match his effort. So you just had to try your best just to try and give the energy that he gave on the court.
I don't want to talk too much about AI because this is a Todd MacCulloch interview, but there's two more things I wanted to ask you about AI specifically. One being AI is kind of known for how he kind of changed what the NBA was willing to allow when it comes to like a dress code or like showing off your personality and the tattoos and expressing yourself. How was that received in the locker room? How were you guys like supportive of it? Were you guys kind of nervous of maybe like how it's gonna be received from the NBA or?
Well, I think we were all supportive, and to us, we wanted him to be the best player that he was, and he was an MVP caliber player, and we weren't really concerned with with the dress code or any of those things. We just wanted him to come ready to play, and he always did. And he used to say like we're basketball players. We should dress like basketball players. Do you ever wear a suit to the when you went to the playground? You went to shoot hoops. Did you ever wear a suit? And it was a little bit of a disconnect to him. He's like, we're basketball players. We should be able to dress comfortably and like athletes that we are. And so he kind of blazed his own trail and kind of did his own thing. But when it came to playing, nobody gave more effort. Nobody wanted to win more than him. So none of us had an issue with with any of that stuff because when it came down to it, he played harder than any team I've ever had.
The second AI question I had was whether in the NBA Finals against the Lakers, he hits that shot and steps over Tyronn Lue. Did you ever think that was actually going to be a moment that's remembered 20 years after the fact?
No, I don't think I did. And who knows what will become. We're kind of in that culture now where those moments, become memes and this and that. And I think maybe last year somebody sent me a photograph of some people in their Halloween costumes, and it was I think it was a guy and a girl, and the guy was dressed up like Allen Iverson, and maybe the girl was Tyronn Lue, and he's stepping over him, so it's become a Halloween costume. And then I'm watching my Seattle Seahawks, and they score a touchdown. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, and then they did the celebration of recreating that by stepping over Tyronn Lue. So for that to kind of become that kind of moment was a little bit surprising, but. Iverson was on fire. I think he finished with 43 or 48, and we won that game in overtime. And the Lakers had not lost a playoff game that whole series, and so that was the first loss they had. So I think he was just saying like, hey, I don't care what anyone says, we can compete with this team. And unfortunately, they rattled off 4 straight after that. But I think that was just Iverson saying, no one's going to tell me that we can't compete with this team, and he did everything he could to try and get us some wins in that series.
So you have an up and down first year in the NBA in terms of just like sometimes you're getting a ton of minutes, sometimes you weren't getting playing time, sometimes it was up and down. So I kind of want to just skip over that a little bit and talk about the second year when you have the finals run and you take a game from the Lakers. At that moment, was the Kobe and Shaq Lakers already larger than life, or was it developing into that? And how did it feel, being on the court and having large responsibilities in the finals?
Yeah, that team was they were pretty well established. They had won the previous year, and then and then now with the Sixers. So they were the real deal. And I actually played more my freshman year, my rookie year. I was probably the 4th out of 5 big men, and Tyrone Hill was one of the 3 big men that played a lot in a rotation. He had some injuries. We had Matt Geiger. He had some injuries. Theo Ratliff, he had some injuries. So those guys had sort of taken turns with injuries. And then Nazim Mohammed and I were getting some time either at the 5 spot or the 4 spot. And I'd played maybe more that first year, and then in my second year, the year we did go to the finals, I played less, and so I started to question, am I going to have, a job next year? Am I going to be in the NBA? Are there any GMs out there that are, looking for an expiring second, 2-year minimum salary contract for somebody that really hasn't been out there showing what they can do? And fortunately, I did have a chance to play in the finals. And I think Matt Geiger had some injuries in game one. I played very little in game one. The game we won, and I had some significant minutes. I think I maybe had 13 minutes in game two, and I tried to make the most of them. And really the expectation for me to do anything against Shaq was pretty low. So I knew that what I have is my effort. I have my youth. I need to get out. I need to run. And Shaq is playing major minutes, so maybe he's a little bit tired. So when I got in the game, I tried to sprint every time, and I ended up getting, I think Eric Snow and I somehow ended up on a 2-0 break. And how I ever got ahead of Eric Snow, and he gave me the ball for a dunk. And, we talked about keeping the ball high. I think Shaq had 8 blocks in the game. 4 of them were my shots, but I think 2 of them, I got the ball right back. And instead of hanging my head and thinking like, here we go again, I just went right back up with it and tried to be quick with a putback. And I think I finished with, maybe 12 points and 6 rebounds and a couple of blocks. So I made the most of the time I had. Unfortunately, we lost that game. I think we were maybe down just a couple with a minute left. So it was definitely a game that was winnable. And but that, I think, got the attention of maybe 4 GMs around the league, where there's all these GMs that are watching 2 teams battle it out. And so if someone was looking for a young center to give a chance, that all of a sudden I got their attention. And so I just tried to do what I could control, and that was my effort and trying to get out and trying to run and trying to, if I got blocked, just go right back up with it and don't stop until the ball goes through.
You played the Lakers twice in the finals after you signed the contract in New Jersey. But personally, I was a really, really big Kobe fan. So I'm kind of just wondering, was there anything about Kobe's game during the finals that kind of was a realization period that like Kobe's, he's different, he's commanding the game a different way, and then with Shaq, it just becomes unfair?
Yeah, I think both of those guys, had a lot of confidence with good reason. They both put the work in. They were both exceptional athletes, but not just great physical athletes. But they understood the game. They understand who they were. They knew how dominant they could be. And I think Kobe's resilience really stood out. Over the last 9 months, there's been a lot of time to go back and watch stuff. So I started watching those Sixer games because it's been 20 years. And I remember them a certain way from when I played, and I certainly remember game 2 when I was able to be on the court more. But I started watching some of those other games just to see how close they were. And I think it might have been game 3 at home, where we're trying to take the lead in a series. It's 1-1 coming back from LA, and Kobe was having an off game. He was having, I don't know if it was a bad first half, but he'd missed a lot of shots in a row, and it kept us in the game. And Shaq was being dominant. Kobe was just off. And then all of a sudden it didn't change. He still was an assassin, and he still believed in himself. And he hits this just back-breaking shot that was the level of difficulty was extremely high, and he drains it. And all of a sudden, that puts them back on top. And it was his resilience to say, look, I'm just going to keep shooting. You're not going to stop me. I believe in myself. These shots are going to go down. And then I think after that point, he didn't have a lot of halves where he was cold again, and they just built off that. So I think, and those guys knew what they could do, but they also trusted their teammates. They also trusted Derek Fisher. They also trusted Rick Fox. They knew Robert Horry could hit the big shot. So, we would maybe work around the perimeter, trying to go after passes, and then the ball would end up on Robert Horry, and he might be open because of the rotation, and they're going to knock down those shots. So we were in those games, but when it came down to it, they had that championship pedigree and that ultimate confidence that when they get those open looks, they're going to put them down. They're not feeling pressure. They're not scared by the moment. Robert Horry had talked about that this is a game. I don't feel pressure, and I think that you see that in his results and how he was able to knock down those big shots and make those plays look easy and routine. And so I think there was a couple of plays that needed to go our way, and we just they just didn't go down for us. But to be at that level, to be playing at the pinnacle of the NBA in the finals against a team like that something that I'll never forget. Very special memories, and it would have been nice to come out with an NBA championship, maybe one of those 2 years. But I look around at some of the great players that haven't even had a chance to play in any finals, and I feel fortunate that in a short career I got to ride the coattails and be in 2 different finals with 2 different teams, and can't complain that we got second.
Well, I wouldn't say ride the coattails, because after your first finals, you're heading into free agency, like you said. A second round pick only gets a 2-year deal, and you kind of hinted towards it that you thought there's a few teams that are there for you during the first finals. So when you're sitting there after the finals and you're a free agent, can you just take us through that process and, anticipating a deal, getting the deal, signing the deal, and just kind of the emotions that go in through that period?
Yeah, I think after having a good finals appearance in game 2, and all of a sudden, talks intensified with my agents and some interest. I think they, we went out to dinner, and I think they maybe mentioned to my dad, what kind of dollars we might be talking about. And my dad's eyes got wide, and my eyes were getting wide, thinking like, holy, we're not talking about minimum salary anymore. And so I was excited about, the financial potential of a new contract. And, my agents were talking about what they might ask for. And I said, like, can you just tread lightly? Like, we don't want them to, if we're being unreasonable, and I don't want them to end talks. Can we just, let's not ask for too much. And they're like, well, I don't know if we're going to get it, but we're good agents, and we're going to do our job and try and get you the best deal we possibly can. And so I just trusted them. And that, the Nets were definitely interested, and I knew that they had acquired Jason Kidd, and I thought they were going to be a completely different team than the year before. And I asked Steve Nash, who had been teammates with Jason Kidd, what can I, I'm going to be a Net, it looks like, and what can I expect? And he said, imagine playing with a way better version of me. And after having played with Nash, on the national team, I wanted more of that, whether it was Steve or whether it was Jason Kidd. That's the kind of point guard that I wanted to have, calling the plays. And so he kind of assured me that you are not going to regret going to a team run by Jason Kidd, and he was absolutely right. And it really felt good to, I felt I was a big part of that Sixers team in terms of, chemistry, and I feel a part of it. But, if you look at my production on the court, that team was going to go to the finals, whether Todd MacCulloch was on that team or not. Being a starter with the Nets and then making it to the finals, I felt, more a part of the result, I think, in terms of being on the court and kind of feeling like I belonged, and that we were a pretty evenly matched fivesome. I think no one averaged more than 14 points. And so it was a pretty evenly distributed responsibilities in terms of scoring. And I feel like from a rebounding and scoring standpoint, I was an important member of that team. And I think it felt good to, I was never made to feel less than on the Sixers. I was very happy with my role just to be a part of that team. I was having so much fun. But to be a starter with the Nets and make it to the finals, it made me feel good that I was, a cog in that wheel.
Were there any pressures with signing that deal and coming in with Jason Kidd? I remember I came across a Slam magazine cover where it's you, Jason Kidd, and the rest of the Nets right there, and it says the best team in the world. So going into that season, did you guys have to cope with that, or was it did you guys just run with it?
No, yeah, I've got a copy of that in the guest room. I'm very proud of it. And I don't know if you've heard this story before, but we show up to practice one day, and Slam magazine is there to take that shot. Mm-hmm. And I find out that I'm going to be a part of it because I'm one of the starters. And who knows if this is true or not, but it's my understanding that maybe Slam magazine had said, all right, we want Jason Kidd, Keith Van Horn, Kerry Kittles, and Kenyon Martin for the cover shot. And I don't know, I need to maybe ask Jason Kidd this or not, but I think as a leader and as a captain, he was like, whoa, it's the starters, there's nobody. Like, we're not leaving Todd out of this. It's all 5 of us. And so I think that's really cool if that's true. I don't know what their intentions were, but I know eventually, the 5 of us were on the cover. I'm feeling like, I don't belong on the cover with these guys. Like, I know all these guys' names. I watch these guys. They're all, these are like Net legends, and who am I? And then I get the next issue of Slam magazine, and I'm reading like the comments of readers and subscribers. And one of the questions from a reader was, hey, how the hell did MacCulloch end up on the cover of Slam magazine last month? And the editor's response is, yeah, we're still trying to figure that one out here at the office. And I'm reading that going, see, there's a reason why I'm questioning whether I belong there. The editor doesn't think I belong there, but Jason believed in me. We played our first game together against Michael Jordan when he was with the Washington Wizards, and I was so elated to be on the court with them that I had the game of my life. I mean, it might have only been 14 points, but I think we won the game, and I'm getting to play against Jordan, and it's just a dream come true. So I'm hitting fadeaways on the baseline, feeling no pain, jumping higher, running faster. And then a reporter, it was the first time that Jason and I had played together in a game, even though it was an exhibition. Mm-hmm. And a reporter came over and said, hey, Jason Kidd just said you're the best center he's ever played with in the NBA. And I laughed. I thought they were punking me. Are you serious right now? And I thought, like, who has Jason Kidd played with? If I'm the best center, has he had no centers? But it was just that belief he had in me, and I played very well for me because I was so excited about playing with Jordan. But he made me feel like I could be a good center in the East, and I could help them, get far. So having a leader that believes in you like that trusts your hands. That was, I mean, the no look passes. I mean, the ball would be right there on the money. And having played with Steve Nash in the summers, I think it prepared me for a point guard that really wanted to get you the ball, and it was becoming fast. And the faster he gets it to you, the less time the defense has to react. So I think I was ready for it, and I knew, if I drop too many of these, they're not coming. That pipeline is going to get shut off. So whether it was Iverson or whether it was Jason Kidd, that was currency, and I did not want to drop those passes. I wanted them to continue to pass me the ball and to trust me to catch it. So every one of those was I didn't waste those opportunities.
Could you tell that Jason Kidd and Steve Nash had the coaching itch? Or what qualities from what you experienced with them do you think makes them really well suited to be good coaches?
Incredible competitors, incredible communicators, and incredible, judges of character and basketball IQ. You think about Gretzky and the way he would see the ice, and you would see the way they would see the plays develop, and maybe it's like a length of the court bounce pass, knowing like at this speed, at this trajectory, this ball is going to end up, and they see the play develop. They're steps ahead, and I always played with blinders on, and I think that's okay at the center spot. I wasn't running the plays. I didn't necessarily need to know where everybody was. I knew that where I needed to be, and I would be ready for the ball. But it wasn't until I started doing radio when I saw the whole court. I saw it the way a point guard needs to see it, and they need to see the whole thing develop. And Jason Kidd and Steve Nash, two of my favorite teammates ever, and their basketball IQ is through the roof. And I think they got the most out of all of us as teammates. And I think they're so likable. You don't want to let them down. They're the kind of coaches you'd want to run through a wall for because they've been there. They have the credibility. They're not asking you to do anything that can't be done. And they've done it all. And so you can't, that they are speaking the truth, and that they just want the best for you. And I think they understand how people need to be motivated differently. And I think they just pick up on, okay, this guy needs me to kick him in the butt a little bit. This guy maybe needs his ego soothed a little bit. And I think they just know how to get the most out of each of those players. So I think both of them, are excellent head coaches in the NBA. And I think guys want to play hard for them because they respect them.
So we're starting to kind of have to consider time. I know you have some arrangements for after this, so I want to be sensitive with your time. So we kind of already talked about the trade, how you were on the fishing trip and you get the last call. So we're going to glance over that a little bit. But with New Jersey, you have the second finals. Is there any different impressions you have? Is it better because you've been to the finals now that you kind of know what to expect? And how is the mentality going into the second finals?
Yeah, we were really excited. We knew that we were the best team in the East. We jumped out to a 10-game lead. I think we started out 10-0 and really established ourselves as the top team in the East. We also knew that the Lakers had won, 2 straight NBA championships, and they were going to be a formidable opponent. And we did our best to try and handle Shaq and try and put him at the free throw line. And I think he shot 74% in that series. So if Shaq is making 3 out of 4 free throws, he really doesn't have any vulnerabilities. There's really no way to stop him. And Kobe was in fine form. And so, those games were not that close, but we did have a lot of, we felt like we felt like we could compete with that team, and I think we'd done okay against them in the regular season. So we did have a lot of beliefs. Personally, I some of my foot problems were starting to happen, and I was dealing with some plantar fasciitis, and so I was really just trying to get myself as healthy as possible. But my body was not responding the way it was the previous season. So I wish I could have been at my best. I mean, even at my best, I'm not going to match up very well against a guy like Shaq, and so I need everything at my disposal in terms of my health needs to be 110%. And my foot it made me a step slower than I normally am. It made me not able to jump even as high as I normally could. And so I was already outmatched. And then, my personal foot, lingering foot issues were slowing me down. And so it was a little bit frustrating to not be at my best, but injuries are a part of sports. And I think we were, very proud to get the Nets to the finals. And I think they went back the next year after the trade. And so I think those are maybe the only 2 seasons the Nets have made it to the finals at this point. So to be a part of that team was good timing to be there. But I think we knew we had our hands full with that Laker team. They were pretty special.
So after your year with the Nets, which by all accounts seemed to be positive up until the foot problems, you go back to Philly, and now the foot starts to ail you more. Can you kind of talk about first of all, what the diagnosis was and how frustrating it was to have to deal with that, if possible?
Yeah, that was really tough. Get traded to the Sixers, and then I think my problems really started during training camp. We're going 6 hours a day, maybe 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, and that's when my foot problem started. And there was numbness and tingling and just all sorts of neurological issues with my feet. And so at some point was diagnosed with bilateral neuropathy of the feet, and so I couldn't really tell where I was in space. I was falling down. The sensitivities and my ability to feel the court or my socks or the shoes was messed up, and so it was really hard for me to concentrate on the game when something neurologically was wrong with the nerves and the soles of my feet. And so it was a very tough from then on. And I think I maybe played half of that season with the Sixers and was ineffective. Didn't really have a good base of knowing where I am. And basketball at this level is very instinctual, and you go off your instincts and muscle memory. And I just I had to concentrate on where my feet were going to be and try not to fall over. And there's one play, I think I was the release, and Aaron McKee tried to pass me the ball, and it's like my feet were glued to the ground. I couldn't even barely move to get it. And he looked at me like, "Why didn't you even try to get the ball?" And I just couldn't understand why my feet weren't responding when my brain was telling it to do some things. And so that was just the beginning of the end of my career. And I think maybe 40 games into that season, I got pulled. I was playing horribly against Minnesota. I remember, I think I had 5 minutes in the game, and that's the last time I was ever on the court in an NBA game. And from that point on, just tried to figure out what's going on with my feet and how I can get this fixed, whether it's surgery or treatment. And I've been on a kind of a medical journey ever since, trying to, heal my nerves. And it's been a big challenge. It's been difficult.
Did you, even up to this point, have you ever come full circle on it yet? Or is it still something that bothers you? Or did you ever, I'm hoping that you've had a chance to, kick back and kind of enjoy it, not like enjoy the memories of it and maybe leave it in the past.
No, yeah, I look back very fondly on the time that I had. I think the problem with, nerve pain and neuropathy is that it's always with me. It's always there from the moment that I wake up to the moment I go to bed. My feet are I can always feel them. I mean, I wouldn't feel my feet unless I had a rock in my shoe or something like that. And so it's a constant thing, and it's almost like like a ringing in your ears. It's just always there. And there's times where you just try and tune it out, but it affects my quality of life in the sense that it makes me not want to do anything on my feet. Everything that and the problem with nerve issues and neuropathy is even if you've got your feet up on an ottoman, it's not musculoskeletal in the sense it's those nerves, things you feel, whether it's the burning or the tingling or the numbness, you still feel that no matter, even if it's not weight bearing, they're still there. And it kind of starts to, it affects you in a negative way. And the more that I do on my feet, whether it's standing or walking or all those things, then the uncomfortableness of my feet is exacerbated and exponentially worse the more time I spend. So not only can I not play basketball anymore, it makes me not want to go on a hike. It makes me not want to walk. It makes me not want to stand. And so it's always in the back of my head, trying to limit or monitor the time I'm on my feet. And so it's made me a much less active person. And I've got kids, and I want to be able to run around with them. And I sometimes I put on a smile, and I want to be an active father, and I want to play, and I am able to do some things, but I'm not as active a father as I would have liked to have been. So I do the best I can with what I have.
So the time after basketball, you start to indulge in other things, as we can see behind you, pinball. And what kind of joy has that brought to you? How did the competitive nature of pinball come about? And do you feel like it was a good pivot for after basketball?
Yeah, it's been great. And I think I'm a competitive person, and at some point your body doesn't allow you do the competitive things you used to do. In that case, basketball. So basketball was pretty intense and very physical, and there's a lot of things I loved about being a part of a team: the camaraderie, the travel, the conversations, the fun. I don't know that I loved the physical part of it. I did not like being in the weight room. I didn't like pushing and shoving and the aggressive nature of the sport. It's supposed to be a non-contact sport, but it's very physical. So I don't miss that part of it. But so out of pinball, when groups are allowed to be together, I love sharing a common interest with people where the common interest is leisure or fun. And it's seems to be a mentality of the people that are into it, that have been into it since they were youth, like I am. We loved the arcade because it was fun. We loved the roller skating rink because we were there having fun. We loved the ice skating rink. We loved 7-Eleven Slurpees. So wherever there was games or a pool hall, it was these places where you would gather to kind of kick back and let loose. And I always understood, there's the court, and there's the time on, and then there's leisure time. And so I've always been big on leisure, and I've always loved the game. And I think the fact that it keeps score, I've been playing a game my whole life and was lucky enough to be paid to play a game where they're keeping score. There's instant feedback. Put the ball through the hoop, 2 points on the board. That's 2 points for you. And this game is constantly, adding a point. So there's an ability to compete. I've got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game over here that now has, of course, your 4 turtles, and the programmer allows you to play together. You can get 3 of your buddies together, and one of you could be Michelangelo, and one of you could be Raphael, and you play together against the machine. So I love the fact that it brings people together, and we can all, have this common interest of let's take on this machine and let's try and beat it. I'm a kid who loved video games, and there's a lot of similarities between a pinball machine and a video game. I think in the early 90s, the programmer said, hey, there's a reason why video games are so successful, so fun. People want to win them. They want to get to the end. And so a lot of people are surprised to know that pinball has strategy. It has rules. It has an end game, in a sense. We call those wizard modes. And if you can do this, this, and this, just like in a video game, if you can complete these modes and get to the end, you get to the boss. And in pinball, the boss is known as a wizard mode. And so every night I come down here and I have all these challenges ahead of me and trying to get to the end of these games. And I've been collecting for 20 years. And there's games down here that I have not gotten to that yet, and I still try. So I love the challenge. I love the camaraderie. I love the community. And, I feel like pinball is, if I've got a friend that says, hey, I'm coming over tonight, I've got a buddy in town, can I bring him over? And the answer is, of course. Like, if this is a friend of yours, that's a friend of mine. And even though a pinball machine is an inanimate object that doesn't have life, to me, it can act as that third person or a friend of a friend. If someone says, hey, man, I love pinball, I already have something in common with you, and I already sort of trust that you're going to be a fun person to hang out with, unless you turn out to be a jerk. And that usually doesn't happen. But it's almost like someone has vouched for you in my book. If I find out you're into pinball, that's sure a good start. It gives us something to talk about. And more than likely, you like leisure and you like to have a good time, and we're probably going to get on just fine.
Another venture, relatively recent venture after basketball, is a movie that you've been asked to work on. Can you please talk about how that came about? And it's actually, I looked into the movie a little bit. and it looks like it's gonna be a very unique project. So
Yeah, definitely. I've got I was just talking to you about how important my friends were to me. I live on an island here on Bainbridge Island, not too far from Seattle. There's maybe 26,000 people on the island, so it's not a huge number of people, but we have a really good group of guys on this island that, we're a lot of us are into leisure, whether it's, hanging out, going to movies when we could in the movie theaters. And then a couple of years ago, a new buddy that was referred from actually a Canadian buddy of mine said, I'm going to invite my buddy out for beers. And turns out he's a filmmaker. He's made some horror movies. He's a writer, director, producer. And he was tasked with making a movie over COVID. And this producer wanted to make a movie with limitations, right? That you couldn't, there's no sets. There's, whatever filming equipment you have in your house, whatever friends, family have available, put together a 15-minute mini movie based on this interconnected story. I'm reaching out to 7 or 8 other directors around the world. I'm going to compile them, put them together, and we're going to make a feature film out of this separate but interconnected stories. My friend needed a villain. I was home for COVID. I was available to be that villain, and was just thrilled and honored that he wanted me to be a part of his film. And so it's a small part, but I was very proud to be a part of it. And so now we're sort of awaiting distribution of where it's going to get purchased and shown. And I need to follow up when I can let you know if any of your viewers are interested. It's going to be called Isolation. It's nowhere yet, but it will be coming out. I'm super proud of my friend. I just kind of want to get the word out there. And I guess it's my first time on the big screen. So I'm a big guy, and I'm sure I'll look pretty big on the big screen, but it's a cool story.
yeah, keep us posted. We'll watch it for sure. Do you think movies is something you're gonna want to maybe try to tap into? Did you have fun doing this one?
Yeah, I had a ton of fun, and it was an easy part. I'm only on screen for a few seconds. It was an easy shoot, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I don't think anyone's paying me for
Right.
work. I'm probably not good enough to get paid, but every now and then you see a movie where they need a big, huge guy, and maybe it's not a speaking point. So if I need to look like an enforcer or just be a big bouncer or something, maybe I could put my name in the ring. But so far, people are not lining up to pay me for my acting services. But it'll be cool to have a credit in there.
Okay, so usually right about now we would do a segment called Not So Rapid Fire, but I think today it's going to have to be rapid fire. So
All
I'm just
right.
going to shoot some topics off and see what you come up with. So right now, who's your favorite active player in the NBA?
That's a very good question. Chris Paul, I guess, just love. He just had some bad breaks in the playoffs. Just love his intensity, love his playmaking ability, love his competitiveness, and I know how badly he wants it. I know how badly he prepares for it, and I really want him to end up in a situation where he's standing there holding the trophy at the end of it, because he deserves to be in the finals. I think he's a great player and a great teammate from what I understand.
I think you're getting drawn to pass first point guards. The same kind of feelings
Yeah,
for Nash.
as a big man, I definitely was drawn to players like that for sure. So I like those kind of point guards for sure.
Okay, so all time, Todd MacCulloch is starting at the 5. Who are the other 4 guys in your team if you can make an all-time team?
Nashy at the point. Would MJ be a 2 or a 3? Would you say? I guess he could play.
I think he's a 2.
All right, let's put him at the 2. Let's go maybe like a Grant Hill at the 3, maybe Tim Duncan at the 4, and then Big Mac at the 5. How about that?
It's a pretty solid 5.
Okay, I think the center would be the weakness in that one.
Yeah, I think you guys would be just fine. LeBron or Jordan?
Jordan.
I'd follow up on that, but we don't have time. Did you have a welcome to the league moment?
You mean like getting posterized kind of thing?
Just
like in a bad way?
I guess you can take it as a bad way. Some people take it as a humbling experience. Just a moment maybe in your rookie year that kind of is like, okay, this is the league.
Yeah, I think I got dunked on a lot. Kobe Kobe got me bad in the finals when I was with the Nets in 2002, and that was 2002. Then in 2012, my agent called me and said, "Hey, have you seen it?" I'm like, "Have I seen what?" He's like, "Oh, you know." And then I watched the finals that night, and there was a commercial. I think it was called like "This Is Big" or NBA Finals "This Is Big," and it was Kobe just coming down the lane and just cocking it back, and I jump up as high as I can to try and stop him. And it doesn't actually show the ball going through the hoop. I can tell you it did go in, and they broke it down and they digitized it and made it look like it was a video game. And they put his pose in as an air freshener and as a person on top of this cake. And it was just this iconic moment where Kobe just reared back and crammed it on me. And I was like, all right, I'm 7 feet. I jumped as high as I could, and Kobe just crammed it on me. So welcome to the NBA. So I've been dunked on by some pretty damn good players in my day, but I was not running away. Some guys, they don't even want to get in the picture. They want to get out of the poster. I was going to take my medicine. I guess I was going to try. I wasn't going to run away.
No, I think it's the right decision. You got to go for the block. I mean, especially in the finals, it's no time to be stepping out of the way. Did you have a starstruck moment in the league? Because I was looking at the All-Stars, I think it was for 2001, and both teams were stacked. Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Dirk, Karl Malone, Steve Nash, Ray Allen, Tracy McGrady, Paul Pierce, Vince Carter, AI, KG, Elton Brand, Chris Webber, Alonzo Mourning, to name a few.
Yeah, I think probably Shaq. Just larger than life, and we're playing against him in the finals, and the game's over, and he's getting on the team bus in the Jersey Tunnel, and the valet has brought my 1997 Porsche around, and Shaq said, "Hey Todd, what are you doing?" And I'm sort of starstruck. Like I have a lot of respect for him as a player, as a person. I've always looked up to him, and here he is asking me if that's my car, and I'm like, "Yeah, the Shaq is my car," clearly. And he's like, "No, it's not. You don't fit in that car. Valet made a mistake. Have to bring the car around." I was a little embarrassed, and I didn't know. I couldn't be cool in this moment, and he's just cool and funny. And I was like, "This is my car. I gotta go." And I jump in the car and I drive away. And 2 days later, we jump center circle for the next game of the finals. And just before the ref throws the ball up, Shaq says, "Be careful." And I'm thinking in my head, like, "Be careful? What does he mean, be careful? It's a game of basketball." And then he's like, "Be careful driving home that little car." I was like, "Damn, this guy's cool and funny." Here we are in the finals, and I'm nervous. And he's joking about me squeezing into this tiny little Porsche. So good sense of humor. Just a unbelievable competitor and somebody that I was honored to share the court with.
Okay, and we'll call this one the last question, this next question. Out of Philly, New Jersey, and Winnipeg, who has the best food scene?
Philly.
Oh, Philly's think about it.
Philly's got the cheesesteaks, man. I love me some cheesesteaks. Yeah, Geno's and Pat's and Larry's and Tony Luke's. And, oh, man, I love me some cheesesteaks. So I miss that about Philly, and some great restaurants there, some great cuisine. So I definitely miss that Philly food. And I found plenty of food here in Seattle, clearly. But, I definitely like to eat. There's no question about that.
Okay. I want to say thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to be on this small program. It's been really, really cool to pick your brain and to get to learn from your experiences. And I think the people that will be forward to this message will be really appreciative to pick your brain a little bit. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, and continued great things. Thanks for doing what you do for basketball and reaching a new audience. So thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, guys. See you next time.